What's up and welcome to my guitar channel. I bought a new interface, which is the RME Babyface Pro FS. It is an upgrade from the long-time interface that I've had of the Komplete Audio 6 by Native Instruments. And instead of doing a kind of review or trying to show features or something of the Babyface, because I really don't know, and there's already loads of really good stuff about that online, what I'm going to do is compare that to this in terms of audio quality and build quality and what you're getting for the money that you're spending, as well as, to a much lesser extent, the Scarlett 2i2. Now this one, it belongs to my housemate and I haven't really used it. I have recorded the audio examples as best I can as well, but in terms of usability and durability and that type of thing, I don't know because I've never really used it. I have had the Native Instruments for 10 years or something like that, and I've only had the Babyface for about a week. So obviously I know the most about the Native Instruments one. Then I've also been setting up and playing around with the RME and feel somewhat familiar with it, but there's still loads and loads that I need to learn about it, as will be evident throughout this video. So if you're only interested in the audio examples, there is the timestamp below, so go and check that out, and it'll be kind of a straight comparison between the different options that you've got, including with DI'd signals, with the voice, with bass. So we're kind of covering the range of what a standard guitarist might use in his home. And yeah, anything more complicated than that, you can just look up a different video. So the reason why I bought this in the first place is because I wanted something with a really big, obvious dial. I mean, to me, the main output is the most important thing that you will be adjusting all the time. I also like the fact that it has its own headphone output, so you're not using the one dial to control multiple different parameters, which is something that will become evident very shortly. It is really easy to use. You know, there's a phantom power button on the back, so if you're using a microphone like the one that I've got here that requires phantom power, it's a button away. There's 4 inputs, 2 of these are multi-jacks, so you can plug a mic or a guitar into them. Brilliant. Aside from that, it kind of just does its job. I'm not going to show you the Babyface because it's plugged in and currently running my audio, and it's going to be really awkward to kind of fiddle around with that, but there will be an image here somewhere. It does have 4 inputs, so 2 instrument inputs that are dedicated just to instruments and 2 mic inputs. Once again, I won't be requiring more than this. If I do, it does have expandable slots in there, so I can just get a different unit and plug in as many different things as I want. Now, the reason why I chose the Babyface is because it is on the bottom end of the absolute pro gears. So it still mostly acts and sounds like the most expensive RME gear, except I got it secondhand for $1,000, which is about $600 cheaper than the local store that sells it. And of course, being in Australia, stuff tends to be a bit more expensive, as opposed to the $350 that I bought this for. So it's about 5 or 6 times more expensive than this, and you hope that it comes with 5 or 6 times more of the features, which it does, but I am learning more and more about that. So when looking at what to upgrade, I could only really find the RME or the Universal Audio Apollo. They are, as far as I can tell, mostly in the same class. They both seemed like viable options. It's just I'm aware of some pro-level producers that use only RME and swear by it, and that's good enough for me. I don't know that much about this stuff. So I just went ahead and got the best thing that I knew would function that was also something that was affordable for me. So when looking at the strengths and weaknesses, the strength of this is it's very, very easy. It's easy to set up, it's easy to understand what it's supposed to do, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can kind of poke buttons around until you get what you want. The disadvantage of this is the quality. As you will become aware, when we plug the instruments in, it doesn't sound brilliant. Then there are things like the outputs here. There's the left and right out, and they are, for whatever reason, reversed, or it's designed as if you're supposed to have the unit facing away from you so that the left speaker goes to the left and the right speaker goes to the right. When I first set that up, I just plugged them in what I thought would be the right way, and for whatever reason my stereo image was swapped. That's just the way that it's designed. Really dumb. Like, who the hell in the production process was just like, yes, this is suitable, and everyone then just agreed to it? Why would you have wires literally having to be crossed straight from the unit? Super dumb. Aside from that, the build quality and durability, it does feel like a solid unit. I have used this for 10 years without fault, aside from drivers being slow to update. For example, Native Instruments have not released a driver update for Windows 11 as of releasing this video. That doesn't make any sense to me. Native Instruments are one of the biggest audio businesses in the world. They should have their stuff able to be updated immediately. One final thing to note about the quality of this is, and apparently this hasn't been updated in the Mark II version of this, so it's still the same problem. When you're at very, very low levels, only one channel will work. So between the left and right image, you will only receive signal from one speaker. You turn that up a little bit and it'll still happen, and then the second channel will come online and it will stay at the same volume. So at normal listening levels, then you will have both speakers playing music at very, very low levels. One of them will be quieter than the other, and it doesn't make any sense. And yeah, so it's a functional unit. There are definitely flaws to this. It's only a $350 unit. You can't expect it to be perfect, but still kind of annoying that these things seem to be really easy to fix. So the strengths of the RME is the quality of the components, the power of the unit. It can do quite a lot for what it is, and something called Total Mix, which is a program that comes with RME that basically allows you to kind of do whatever you want with it. It makes the unit incredibly versatile. Now, things that are weaknesses is, as I mentioned before, this has a main output and a headphone output. The Babyface does not have that. I find that really frustrating. I kind of find the user interface pretty annoying to navigate. It is one of those things where once you set it up, it's just set up and done, but it's still, I'm kind of interacting with the interface a lot more than I ever did when I was using this. Also, things like apparently I can turn on the phantom power on the unit itself, but I haven't been able to do that. I don't know if because I bought this secondhand, one of the buttons is broken or something, but I can't figure out how to get the phantom power to turn on without going through Total Mix, which I find kind of frustrating. It's like these things should be really obvious and really, really easy to do. And I mean, now that it's set up, I don't have to think about it. But once again, it's like, this should be a really, really obvious thing. Another weakness, even though I said Total Mix was a bit of a strength, is Total Mix. I find the interface kind of sucky, and it's, I don't know, it just doesn't, it feels a bit clunky. Gets the job done. Sure, you can do a lot with it, but it's like, it just feels like you're using some technology from the 90s because of the user interface. As for the build quality, it feels brilliant. I know people who have been using the older versions of this for 10 plus years. So one final strength for the RME is they have a lot of backwards compatibility. So the units that are 20 years old still get driver updates. They made Total Mix something that can be backwards compatible to all of those older units. So this means that if I have this for 10, 20, 30 years, it's likely that it will still be operational, and the only need for me to upgrade will be because I need different functions out of the interface. Not because the interface is old or because they're no longer supporting it. The whole point of RME is to have stuff that just lasts forever. And that to me is really exciting. So the Scarlett, this is a very cheap interface. It feels cheap. For example, if I had dropped this, I don't think it would have any noticeable effect whatsoever. Same with the RME. I mean, I wouldn't want to be dropping any of these, but this feels cheap. This plastic on it, I don't know, I wouldn't be yanking any cords out of this because I feel like I'd destroy the faceplate or something like that. It only has 2 line outputs. It's a really, really basic unit designed to get the job done. It, once again though, is very simple. There's buttons for the 48 volt power. It's like the headphone dial, the master volume dial, all these things, they feel nice. It is really obvious and really straightforward how this should be used, but it does feel cheap because it is the cheapest of the lot that I've showed you so far. I don't have much experience with this, so we're better off, instead of having my opinion, looking at the audio examples. So on that note, let's look at the audio examples and compare all 3 how they sound. So the way that I've set this up is we've got a clean channel, which is just straight. So guitar plugs straight into the interface. Next one, we're going through a DI, same idea. Then we're going to go into a dirty example so you can see how the DI affects the end result. Then we do everything through a DI again. So once again, we get a different set of results. Then we'll have a microphone test, so just the interface, me saying a couple of words, then bass, and then bass DI. So first thing to note is I did have, this is the RME, obviously, it says clean RME. I did have this plugged straight in and I couldn't get the guitar signal to not clip. So this was at the lowest possible input setting and I didn't play that as hard as I could because the signal would clip. So just keep that in mind. This is the Native Instruments one. I had it playing at what I thought was the same input volume, but obviously the output or what was received to the signal was a lot quieter and a lot less dynamic. Let's actually just turn that up a little bit so that we get a similar kind of waveform. Yeah, it's similar to the Scarlett, but anyway. So obviously that's a lot darker of a sound. Now, that's fine in certain circumstances, but generally you want something that's going to have the better clarity, something that sounds more like a guitar that's actually being played into a thing. Obviously the inputs on the Native Instruments are not designed for guitar. They're designed first and foremost for singing. So anyway, let's move on to the Scarlett and see how that sounds. So on the Scarlett, once again, I had the input set on the minimum setting and I still was clipping when I was doing that. I don't think my guitar's got particularly high output, but that is just apparently the way these things are set up. Clearly, the Scarlett and the RME sound most similar, with the Komplete being quite dark. So in that way, the Komplete loses this round entirely. I'll just show you the Scarlett and RME back to back. Based on that, you can make your decision. I mean, straight away, I think that the Scarlett is going to be more versatile, more flexible, because it sounds like a guitar's coming into the thing, even if it's a cheaper unit. The Komplete just really isn't doing that justice. So next, what I did is chucked a DI in the way to see how that changes things. And then I played it wrong. One thing that's worth noting is every single thing that you're hearing here has been played on its own individual track. So there are natural variations in the performance, including this one where I just straight up played it wrong. Just keep that in mind, that there is a natural variance here. If I'm playing something softer on that one take than I was, and harder on the next, then the harder one's going to come out more bright. So there is a level of this that you got to consider. I did what I could to try and make it even. So that sounds like a guitar to me. The signal's probably a bit better on the RME in my opinion, because it's just, I don't know, it sounds a bit more bitey, it sounds a bit more, there's clarity to it. It's not like the clean one is unclear, there just seems to be a better level of clarity when we've gone through the DI. That's a world apart from the original. I'd just like to point out that that is still quieter, but the DI has pretty much entirely fixed the dullness that was in the Komplete before. That sounds like a usable guitar tone to me. And then the DI through the Scarlett. That sounds pretty good to me. I'd say that if you're plugging your guitar straight into the Scarlett or straight into the RME, you're going to have a good time. If you're plugging it through, if you're going through a DI, then the Komplete works perfectly. So let's try that with the dirty and see what the result is after we've done some post-processing. Sounds like a guitar. Sounds like a guitar, but there's definitely a level of mud and clarity that, you hear it in the palm mutes, where it just kind of gets lost. Now into the Scarlett. Once again, that sounds clear. There's obviously performance issues going on in there. Let's hear what the DI'd signals sound like comparatively. Sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. It definitely sounds different. It might be that it's lower in volume. You're gonna be clipping a bit there, but let's see what that does. It's definitely a viable option. Great, so what I'm deducing at this point in time is if you've got the Komplete, get a DI to make your guitar sound good. The other two should be fine. So let's listen to the mic examples.
This is my voice.
That was my voice.
This is my voice.
That was my voice.
This is my voice.
So these examples are kind of complicated. The way that I heard it is the RME sounded like a microphone recording a voice. Sounded fine. The Native Instruments Komplete one.
This is my voice.
It sounds thin to me. I did say it at a higher pitch, but it sounds like this is my voice, as opposed to having the normal kind of roundness and fullness that my voice has. Then we look at the Scarlett, and this to me sounds straight away like it needs a de-esser.
This is my voice.
You see how the "this is my voice" is really kind of screaming through on that one. There is zero processing on any of these, so it's just the signal kind of coming straight out. But the 6 feels thinner than the RME, and the 2i2 feels like it's got a real big boost on the high level and a very subtle boost on the bass, or maybe it's just a cut in the mids. So to me, the Scarlett loses on this one. It just kind of sounds crappy compared, but then the 6 feels thin. So the RME entirely wins out on this one, and I mean, you hope so. I spent a lot more money on this, it's worth a lot more. But there's a really good example of the subtle differences. I'll play them all for you again.
This is my voice. This is my voice. This is my voice.
The Scarlett sounds a bit more balanced than the Komplete to me, but they're both kind of shocking compared to the RME. So let's go on to bass and then finish off this video. Bass directly into RME, we can probably bet that it's going to sound like a bass. The Komplete's going to sound crap, and the Scarlett's going to sound pretty decent. Bass. That's exactly what we want, our signal distorting when we plug it straight into the interface. Viable. Both the RME and the Scarlett are viable. The Native Instruments just fucking fucked that one right up, didn't it? So the final thing to note here is I'm currently using the Fireface, the Babyface, whatever, the RME as my main thing. I've got 256 samples with 11.8 milliseconds of latency overall on my system. If we chuck in the Focusrite, we're on 256, we've got more than twice the amount of latency, and 26 milliseconds of latency. We chuck on the Komplete, 23. That's just a really quick example of the more that you spend, the better processing you're going to get. Admittedly, my experience and one of the big reasons why I chose to upgrade from the Komplete is because I was having some serious latency issues that I could not get around. It was, you know, writing a song or something, and then I just can't record guitar anymore because the session is too slow. And it's like, that is such a pain in the ass to me. So I've now upgraded. I can essentially double the buffer size on the Babyface, and it works at twice the speed, more than twice the speed of the Native Instruments. So it means that I can have a lot more processing going on, can allow my creative process to be what it is and still be effective without having to worry about the computing power that I'm using. I hope this was informative. I've never actually used the Scarlett before, except for when I was having computer issues the other week. I'm actually really surprised by this unit. I know everyone uses it. I know everyone recommended it ever since I was young, and I chose to go with the Native Instruments because at the time I was a little Native Instruments fangirl. At the end of the day, did it bite me in the ass? No. It functioned as I needed it to function. It's just now I need something that's a lot better, and so I got that. But I'm also finding that I probably made the wrong decision many years ago. So anyway, do your research, like talk to the people that's appropriate to talk to understand what your needs are, because there's no point in spending $1,500 on an interface when all you need is something that functions. That's it for me this week. I will see you next week for more stuff about music. Bye-bye.